So, this video is to talk about how you can use Photoshop to work on your food photography images. This is an image that I've taken from the class. I think this was the two Gabby's and Alicia's photo of their brownies. And what I've done is I've made some changes and adjustments in Photoshop, and you can sort of see them here. I'm going to just go and click on history and show you the original photo. And then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to talk you through the toolbox on the left, talk about layers on the right, and then the sort of options up here at the top. I'm going to explain them and some of the features that we can use with our food photography images, but I'll just take it back and show you the original image. So, big differences that we can see is there's changes in color, there's changes in clarity as well, and then some minor changes over here as well. So I'll just take you back. It's a lot brighter as we can see here. So I'll just take it back to the original and we'll work from there. I'll talk you through here. So up the top we have the move tool. That works especially well with layers over here. So I'm just going to unclick. So when it's locked, that means that we cannot move our background. So I've unlocked that, and then the move tool, that moves our image around, or our layer around. The select tool, that selects certain areas. So for example, I'm going to select this area here, and that means I can then make adjustments based on that. So for example, I'm just going to hue and saturation, I'm going to make it lighter, and we can see that makes that section lighter when that section is selected. Excuse me. Other important tools that we're going to look at today is the crop tool, or that you can use as well for your images. So what you should know what the crop tool is that it's by cropping the image, so only selecting certain areas of the image that we want. So for example, we can drag that in, and I might only want this section of the image, and I'm going to click crop, and that's my sort of cropped photo. How we can fix that though is if we don't want that, and this is an important sort of feature of Photoshop that you're going to have to learn to use if when we're making mistakes or experimenting, is clicking edit and undo, and that takes us back. There's another way of doing that, clicking on window and clicking on history, and I'll talk you back through that, what we've already done before. And for example, I can click back and see the different sort of things I've done before. That's what I had open at the start. Another sort of tool that you can use, and one of the sections that I had in my sort of edited image is here. We've got two things. We've got the spot healing brush tool and the healing brush tool. These tools are used to fix up any blemishes or any sort of areas which are sort of we want to fix up in our image. An example of that in this photo, and this is one of the reasons why I picked it so we can use it, is this sort of area here. It's got a bit of like strawberry juice or some of the remnants of that here when after they've moved their objects around for the second time, and this has been left here, and it's not especially a good look, and we want to remove parts of that. So I'm going to show you how we can do that with your images. So the spot healing brush tool, what that does, that takes from other parts of the image around the area that we want to take out and sort of samples that and fixes it up. So for example, I've got my circle here. I can make that bigger or smaller. The bigger it is, excuse me, the less accurate it is. So I'm going to only do it about 60 or so. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that across, for example, over here. And it's going to start cleaning it up a little bit for me. If we can see that there, for example. But if we're doing it too much and too repetitively, we can see here, I'm just going to zoom in, it samples from the areas around it and it repeats. So what is happening here, it's continuously repeating it, and that can, if you keep on doing that too many times, it becomes a bit obvious, and it's showing that, oh, this is over Photoshop. But I'll just keep on going. Just over here, for example. Just fixing it up a little bit. What the other tool we can use, and this is sometimes a better tool to use, is the healing brush tool. Now what this tool does is you select the area rather than the healing brush, a spot healing brush, that the computer selects the area that you're going to sample. Here, the healing brush tool, you use that yourself and you select. So for example, I'm going to go over here, and what I do is I press down on Alt Option on my keyboard, so it's down in the bottom left between Control and Command. I'm going to click on that. It comes up with the little crosshairs, and I click, and that means when I've clicked, that means I've sampled that area, but it's only when the crosshairs are on, not when the circle's on. So you can see when I'm moving across, the area that I've sampled is there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to click here. And what it is, it sort of goes over the top of it a little bit. So it's blending in. We're just getting rid of some of these blemishes. So it matches the color, but the pattern is the sampled. And the whole idea is that we're getting rid of some of these blemishes here. But again, if we're doing that too often, it's coming across too Photoshop, but I'm just doing it just a little bit. Not to make it too obvious. Especially these red sort of dots here from the strawberry. That's the sort of stuff that we want to get rid of. Stuff like that. Excuse me. So that's the sort of introduction to the blemishing. The other sort of tools we've got here is the paintbrush tool, but we're not going to be really using that. We've got the eraser, which is here, and that means we can, for example, I'm going to erase certain parts of the image, but I don't think we're going to be really using that. The other tool here is we've got that paint bucket and the gradient tool. We'll be using the gradient tool a bit later for something a bit more advanced, but we don't really need to do that now. And then the last thing over here that we really want to look at is the text tool. And one of the sort of things that you might want to be doing with your images, you might be interested in making a magazine cover, for example. So you grab the text tool, you create like a text box. And this is the size, and then you can fiddle around with the size. I already have mine set at 302 because it's quite a large image. You go through your fonts here, for example. So I'm going to pick Rex Bold, for example, and I'm going to do food photography. Sorry, bad spell. 2016. And then I can, for example, make that adjusted. I can click here, and that means I've stopped editing, and then I can click on the move tool and I can move that around the page wherever I want to. What I can also do is I can go over here. This is the layers sort of section. So this decides what order the different images are coming up. So for example, the text layer is above the image layer. But if I move the text layer below it like that, so by clicking and dragging it, I'm putting it behind it. But by putting it behind it, now we cannot see it anymore, so it becomes invisible. So I'm going to have it in front of them. What you can then do is you can right click on the layer and click blending options. So what this blending options do, again, it's more about experimentation with this sort of stuff. And it's got all these sort of different options for what you can do. So for example, if I want to click drop shadow, then shadow comes behind it. We can click on the different options. And I can make the shadow bigger, I can make it bolder. That's too much probably, but you can do something like that if you wanted to. You can change the color of the text. You can change the color of the shadow by clicking on the color box and playing around with that. Different sort of things you can do, bevel and emboss, where it looks like it's coming out of the page. Stroke just gives you sort of an outline around the text. What you can also do is you can play around with the blending sort of tools. So for example, I want to do exclusion, and it comes up with like the solarization or opposite of the colors from the photo. So it's taking the colors, opposite colors onto there. We can also, for example, do lighter color. That's just the same light though, but some others will have differences. So for example, difference, I can do divide. That doesn't work though on this one. Saturation, so you can see that gray is coming up. So it's the desaturation on that. But what we can also do is, for example, I can just do normal, and then I can make it stronger or lighter, so I can make it a bit transparent and a bit opaque with using that. Okay. I think so. That's talked us so far through crop, and we've done spot healing. We've done a little bit about text. What I want to do now, though, so I'll just delete that layer. And how we delete layers is the garbage bin icon down here. So I'm just going to click delete layer. Yes, I'm just going to drag that across there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go across the top panel here. And the main thing I want to look at is image. We click image and we click adjustments. Also, and before we get into color adjustments, one thing that you might want to know is how to rotate your image. So for example, I can rotate it 180 degrees, 90 degrees clockwise, and 90 degrees counterclockwise. So for example, like that. And then we could fit on screen like Let's go back. That's my background. Okay, but what I'll do is I will go back and I'll click undo rotate canvas, and there, it's back like that. So what I can do now is we're going to look at adjustments, and these are all our sort of colors and things. So the first thing that I want us to look at is hue and saturation. Hue means color, and saturation is how bright those colors are. Sorry, I've just got a bit of hay fever. And here it says master. Master means all the colors. So I can make those colors brighter, or I can make those lighter by desaturation. So we're taking the colors out. They've got lightness, so we're making the color brighter, making it darker, etc. And then we've got hue. What the hue does, it changes the color, so it controls where the colors go. So we can see that it's going towards red, now almost like purple sort of shade. I'll take that back. We don't want to make these big dramatic changes like this. That is not what I'm after. I'm only after these slight sort of changes. How we can control that grade is by clicking on master, and then you're going through and selecting the different colors that you might want to change. So for example, I want to take out yellows. And I might want to, because the board is yellow, I might want to desaturate it and have the focus of the colors onto the strawberries and the brownies. So I'm going to click desaturation, and that is slowly going out. So the board is losing its color, and our focus is going towards the brownies and the strawberries. I might just make it lighter, for example. I might make it darker, but that's really bringing out those sort of colors. But I'll just take that back down. Maybe not so much, but I can click on reds, and I can make them even brighter. So I'm making the strawberries look really bright and quite fresh. I can make them lighter if I wanted to. Make them darker. That's too dark though. Just making some slight adjustments. You don't want to be too dramatic. Anything like that is way too much. For example, never going to 100%. Even 50 is unrealistic. I would only be playing around with like 20, between plus 20 and minus 20, anything within that sort of range. I'm just going to click OK on that. Other sort of things that we can look at is brightness and contrast. Contrast, so that means the blacks and whites are further apart, so the whites are dark, the whites are lighter, the blacks are darker, and those sort of colors in between as well. So we can make that big difference there. That's probably too much, but we can see how the contrast can be used to make the lighting seem more dramatic. And then we can make it seem, this looks almost a bit more mundane. So we might want to up that contrast maybe a bit, maybe up to like that 10%. Brightness, so we can make it image look really dark, we can make it look really bright, which is way too bright. Again, we're going to be working in this like 20 to 20 sort of range. I would say maybe we can just make it slightly brighter, I'll make it maybe a bit less, maybe the 5. Other things that we can use, adjustments, we can go to selective color. This is where we can control the colors a bit more. So we can play around with the reds, for example. We can go cyan, make the reds brighter, put different colors into them. So for the reds, we might want more yellows into the reds. Or we want to take out all the yellows and it turns purple, for example. What you can also do is you can go to whites and neutrals and blacks. Those are the ones I would normally use. So for example, neutrals. And that means any of the neutral colors on there, I can add more yellow or less yellow. So no yellow, more yellow. And I can play around with those sort of colors through there. Might add up, make that cyan a bit higher as well. Get those blacks, make them a bit darker. A bit too dark, I think, though. About there. Last thing that I think we can use as well is the photo filter. And that's just here. And that's by putting just a filter over the top of our image as well. So we've got all these different sort of options here. So for example, I might click on sepia. And we never want to really go to 100%. I would say around the sort of 40%, 40, 50, between 20 and 50, I would say is about our range. So it's sepia there. We can go to a cooling one, go to a warming one. And it's just adjusting about what suits the food as well. But we can also, for example, if we want to do deep blue, emerald, for example, you can play around with those sort of features. I might do a warming one though. That's better, more than that yellow. I'm going to have that around maybe just like the 16 sort of mark right there. And that's sort of, those are the only sort of things that I really want us to look at with sort of color adjustments there. Okay, So that's a lot of information so far, and if you're doing well with that, that's great. If you need to go back in the video, that's fine as well, and if you need to cover different sort of things or go back on it if you're not sure, that is fine. What I would like to do now is something a bit more advanced, and it's looking at blurring different parts of the image and showing you how you can do that. But if you're not confident with that, keep on working on your image, and you don't have to do that. This is sort of an extra sort of thing. But if you want to, this is sort of, you can try this out and see how it works for your image. What we're going to do is we're going to do a quick layer mask. A layer mask is an invisible layer over the top of the image where we can make some adjustments to it. So that quick layer mask is down here next to our color palette. It's the rectangle with a circle inside. I'm just going to click that. There we go. So our image now has a layer mask. What I'm going to ask you to do now though is clicking on the gradient tool. So that's here. How you can get there, if, for example, if yours is the paint bucket, it might be there, and you just need to right click and the gradient tool will come up like that. What I'm going to ask you to do is we've got this pointer here. What you're going to do is you're going to draw a line down the page, down your image, and that line will come up with a red shade, and that red shade will be the area that you want in your image to be in focus. So for example, it's just the top of the image right there for me right now. You will have to sort of play around with it because it is a bit temperamental. So I want everything sort of up to here to be in focus. I don't want the lower area to be in focus. Okay, important thing that we need to remember up here is if you haven't checked it, you need to put it onto reflected. Let me just see if the text is going to come up. It's diamond gradient. We want to be on reflected gradient. So check that please beforehand, or you can be on radial as either. One or the other. I normally do reflected though. So that's it there. What we're going to do then, so that's an example. I might just do that one more time though. Gradient tool. Might just make that bigger. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to uncheck that layer mask. So I'm going to click on it. And what's happened is this is the sort of area that is coming up that is selected that we're going to blur, but I'm not happy with that. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to click on my layer mask again. I'm going to draw another line. So I'm going to draw from the top all the way down to the bottom. Do that one more time because we want more of it. Come on. Again, it's about you sort of experimenting with it, making sure what you want is right. There we go. Now I'm going to click on filter. I'll uncheck it. So this is the area that's going to come up blurred. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to click filter, blur, and then I'm going to click lens blur. And now another box is going to open up now. What you can then do is then you can go to radius, and the radius sets about how strong the blur is. So if I go all the way to the top, we're just waiting for that to load, and that's way too much. It's way too strong. Again, we want to be playing around with like between the 10 to 20 sort of margin. This is 20. I think we can drop that down to about 14 or so. So we can just see it. The purpose of this is to make sections blurred, so that the reason for that is for our attention to move away from the blurred areas to areas that are sharp and focused. That's our eyes go towards areas that are in focus and sharp. Our eyes are going to go away from areas that are blurred. So our main focus in the image wants to go towards the texture of the strawberries and the brownies, not towards the sort of ice and sugar and the breadboard. So that sort of area, I'm going to have that blurred, and then up the top here, our focus is going to be on this. You can sort of play around with that, mainly just on the radius. I wouldn't touch any of these other sort of things. And I'll click OK. And there's our image. Let's go to window and let's see the original. Bit of a difference, I think. I think we've improved that a bit more. Okay. So I've given you a bunch of different sort of tools. What I would like you to do is to experiment with that. Do 3 or 4 photos and see how that goes and working in your groups with that. Thanks.